Faggots, lesbians, dykes, cross-dressers too. To me, to you and you and you and you. To people living with, not dying from disease.
Although she's excelled at playing the blonde, the beautiful, and the slightly misguided in the shows Legally Blonde, Wicked, and Hair, today's guest is currently exploring a darker, sexier side, playing Maureen in the off-Broadway revival of Rent. Please welcome Annaleigh Ashford.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Welcome. Good to
Thank
see you.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm
This
happy
is
to
my
have
first
you.
talk show.
Your first talk show.
Uh-huh.
And you put some beautiful shoes on.
I wore some leopard. Oh, it's raining outside, so my knee just crunched. But yeah, I wore leopard for you and everything.
Thank you. I always appreciate that. I don't even think Ellen Green was here, but I don't even think she wore leopard, but it reminded me of Ellen Green.
Oh, that's magical. Amen. I'm going to go back and watch that one. I love her.
Now, I saw Rent this past weekend, and I have to
Yes.
tell you that I thought I was done with Rent, and I had no interest really in seeing the revival, and I went to see it for you.
Thank you.
And I was blown away. I had a real emotional experience watching it, and it's really fresh. I mean, it looks
Thank
very
you.
different, and the set and the costumes and the cast, it's just, how's it for you?
It's been amazing. You know, I'm so glad that you said, you know, that it's different because it's
Yeah.
a different show. We really, you know, reimagined it, and Michael Greif did a wonderful job at reinventing his own masterpiece.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it was an incredible experience to explore that with him. The journey was quite wonderful, and I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to finally play this role that I've always wanted to play.
And you do the one of the craziest pieces of musical theater, Over the Moon, this ridiculous performance art piece, and you make it funnier than maybe it's ever been. I mean,
Thank you.
it's
That's
hilarious.
so sweet.
It was hilarious.
Thank
So
you.
tell me a little bit about what it was like, sort of taking. I mean, I had in my head sort of what Idina Menzel did, and although many actresses have played the part, it's it's off that original mold, and you had the opportunity to sort of just start from scratch. So what was that like?
Oh, I mean, what a blessing, because the piece is so interesting and bizarre, and such kind of a representation of its time in terms of performance art.
Yeah.
And parts of it, you know, when you really look at the text, it's all a metaphor. So trying to break it down and figure out what meant what within the story, and how we could, you know, explore that, and you know, kind of represent it through movement, through projection. And then I was really obsessed with wearing a unitard, and he was like, okay, well, let's continue on from that thought. I don't know why I was obsessed with that. I was obsessed with wearing a nude unitard. But what I'm wearing now is just perfect. It's, you know, magic. So we talked about some performance artists that he really wanted me to look at, and also some that I wanted to look at. The NEA4, Laurie Anderson I took a lot from, because she used physicality, she also used projections, and she used music. So all of those people during that period, they were fighting so hard for their art, and that is really what's at the core of the piece, is that I think what makes it so funny is that it has to be so serious. She is like dead serious about everything she is saying, and she really believes that art can change the world, and her art is going to change the world.
Right.
Underneath that, you know, it's all about her, but that's what's on top of it, you know.
Well,
so,
that's Actress 101, right?
I mean, amen. Just, you know, whatevs.
You actually have dabbled in performance art a little bit yourself. Tell me about, I heard about somebody named Hollywood Starr, S-T-A-R-R, 2 R's.
Yes.
This is you.
Yes, yes.
Or was you.
It was me.
So tell me who Hollywood Starr is.
Well, long ago, actually not really that long ago, when I was going to college at Marymount Manhattan College here in New York City, there at the time, and still is, but at the time there was a really interesting, thriving music scene happening, and I was involved with Lady Starlight, who is now involved with Lady Gaga, and Breed Love and Anna Copacabana. This is just a few of the peeps that I worked with, but I was a dancer for Lady Starlight at a lot of her parties. She did a party called the English Disco, and at the time I had like short white hair. I wore red lipstick like every day. My look was inspired from Serinda Fox, who was married to David Johansen, who fronted the New York Dolls. And I would show up to clubs with full-on beat an outfit from like 1971. Like I never wore anything of this era ever. And I would dance and go dance, not in the way that you see people go dance at like clubs, but I would do like full on lyricals, like fouettes into pirouettes. I would do leaps and jazz hands and Fosse moves and like crazy dancing, to the point where people were uncomfortable but also excited. That was like the point. And you know, for the evening, I was like a different person. And then at like 4 o'clock in the morning, we would have pizza o'clock, which meant it was time for pizza, which Anna Copacabana coined that phrase. But it was a really, I mean, exciting time in the New York music scene. It was very exciting, the club scene. And I'm so grateful that I was like a part of it, doing my own weird performance art. I remember one time I showed up at a club and they played Gloria, Gloria. And I had on black lycra tights and like a sequin halter top. And my hair was in a crazy bun with all these curls. And I full on did leaps across the bar. I just did like a million leaps. I just was doing grand jetés over the whole club and people just part the seas for me. You know, and Jimmy Fallon was at like the end of the people, and he was like, "Yeah, I got the joke, woo!" It was comedy.
And you were sober.
Full on
He
sober.
sounds like he was wasted, but you were actually.
I don't know. It was real late. There were many mornings where we would come home and the sun would be coming up, and I would be like, "Let's go to Hot and Crusty and have a bagel and some coffee." Yeah, I didn't drink. You know, I would just dance. I was like totally having a blast. You know. Just being a performance artist, that really was a form of performance art. I knew quite a few artists at the time who are now actually involved with Justin Bond and some transgender performers who were doing some really, I think, important work downtown and still are. And I really, you know, in the performance piece, I wanted to pay respect to them and their craft, and also, you know, explore the fact that Maureen is so serious, but also a bit of a mess in her performance art. But yeah, it was a cool time.
So was Stephanie Germanotta, who we now know as Lady Gaga, she was actually around. You met her? She
was. You know, the first, I've met her a few times. The first time, though, was way before the Gaga madness started. She had just started calling herself Lady Gaga, and I knew her as Stephanie. And she was working with Lady Starlight. Lady Starlight was her DJ.
Right.
And she was opening for another band that night. And she kept getting on stage with them. And I was like, that girl cannot stop getting on stage. What is her deal? And she also was wearing, I went through a period where I would wear vintage undergarments as outfits for the night.
Yeah.
So I would wear like a girdle and an old matronly bra from the 50s and like some pumps. And that was my outfit. And she was wearing something kind of similar, and I was like, and she still does, which is so fabulous. But I was like, what's going on? She's wearing underwear as an outfit. Excuse me. But she has been so wonderful to all the people that were around her during that period. Lady Starlight still works with her. My best friend Breed Love, also known as Craig Jessup, he you know, is still on the scene with her, and she's been wonderful to those people who were around in the beginning, which you can't say about very many ultra pop stars.
But
like her.
She might have been slightly inspired by Hollywood Star with her look.
I mean, let's put it out there. If she ever sees this interview, she'll be like, what? But, you know, I was there. I was there for it all. I was there, you know, pumping up the magic.
So you're a good girl from Colorado.
Yes.
Did your parents know that you were down on the Lower East Side clubbing with the ladies and the...
I remember my mom came out. I used to stay during the summers and go to school through the summer. And my mom and my sister came out for my birthday one year. And my closet had gotten kind of like out of control. And my mom was going through these clothes, and I had a section of uniforms where I had like a Howard Johnson's uniform. Remember the Howard Johnsons?
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, and they closed it down, and we got some of their uniforms. It was like so exciting. I had some old vintage nurse uniforms. I had a policewoman's uniform from the 40s. And my mom was like, okay, Annie, I understand that you're exploring and you're being an artist or something, but I can't stand these uniforms, especially the nurse one she really hated. She was like, this is too much. Can you stop wearing the nurse uniform at least? She was not into that. But she's, you know, been so supportive of everything. And I always, when I danced and when I wore my strange garments, I always was extremely tasteful about them, you know. So She didn't have to worry too much.
I actually the first time I ever saw you was somebody told me you have to go see this little show, Feeling Electric, at the Nymph.
Oh my God, you saw it.
I saw it, and I was like, who is that girl and what is she going through? You were this little angry, you were Natalie, you played the daughter. This is an early version of what became Next to Normal.
Yes.
And you played Natalie, the role Jennifer Damiano played on Broadway.
Yeah.
But she was like a little goth girl, right? You had totally different kind of.
Totally different.
You were hardcore. You kind of scared me a little bit, I gotta tell you. It's nothing at all like this like beautiful, friendly blonde girl here.
Thank you.
Terrifying.
That's the best compliment ever.
Yeah, totally.
She was. I mean, at that point, you know, we did about 6 shows in that house, probably seated about 120 people, so not very many people saw that. But I remember going to the first music rehearsal at Tom Kitt's house, and I sat down and we went through the first couple songs, and we got halfway through, like, the first act, and I just stopped and was like, I was 20 years old. I was like, this is like really good. Do you know, like, this is really good. He was like,
you're like the
Thank
Pulitzer
you.
Prize Committee.
I know.
You were the first one.
I know, right? You know, I was actually like, I had seen David Stone like right after they won the Pulitzer, and I was like, it's amazing, and I knew it. I knew it. So crazy. But Tom was so sweet. He was like, thank you so much. You know, at that point, you know, the ball hadn't started rolling.
And you ended up going on to much lighter roles. I mean, you played Glinda on tour and on Broadway. And your Broadway debut was in Legally Blonde. You were Margot, one of Elle's kooky friends. The kookiest, I guess.
Oh, yes, kooky and a little bit special. A little bit. She could talk to dogs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love Margot. And I was like, I love that girl. And I immediately thought I wanted you to see you also play Elle Woods at one point. And you did do it, and I missed it.
One night only, that's all there was to see. I had one of the most thrilling theatrical experiences of my life that evening. It was crazy. There was a big hole in the stage. Remember, there was that elevator that opened up, and I remember waiting to make the grand entrance. And all the crew guys were standing there, and all the stage management before I went up, they were all waving at me like, good luck. And we knew in 2 weeks I was leaving to go play Glinda. So it was like the last chance I was going to get to do it. And I remember praying as we were coming up. I was like, oh, Lord, let me just have a wonderful show and enjoy myself. Please, Lord, please let me not fall in this hole. I can't fall in this hole. Please just let me not fall in the hole. And then I like turned around, it was time to start the show, and I sang like the first line. It was amazing. It was so fun. I didn't fall in the hole.
I'm glad.
Thank
I
God.
probably would have heard if you had fallen in the hole. That would have been news.
Yeah, that would have been news. That would have been bad. Yeah, that would have been awkward. But thank God I didn't, and it was amazing. I'm so glad I got to do it. That role, I give kudos to everybody who ever played it, especially Miss Laura Bell Bundy, who originated it, because it was like, it's like Glinda and Elphaba mixed together. It's aerobic challenge, physically, vocally, and emotionally. I mean, she's all over the place. But it was quite an experience. I had a blast.
Have people told you that they remind you of like a young Goldie Hawn?
Oh, that's like the best compliment ever. I love Goldie Hawn. I have like all the laugh-ins.
Yeah.
She's one of my faves. You know, House Guest, Overboard, 2 of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, just to be mentioned in the same sentence with her is such an honor.
Is comedy really like sort of, what do you want to do? Do you want to do everything? Or?
Comedy is so high stakes. It's sometimes even higher stakes than drama. You know, to be funny, you have to cry harder. You have to fall harder. I did some clowning a couple years ago with Cirque and with David Shiner.
Banana Spiel.
Yes, and
I forgot about Banana Spiel.
I was the only woman in a room full of male clowns for like literally 10 hours a day for like 4 months, which was extremely
That was
interesting.
crazy. You worked on this show for a really long time, and then they basically reconceived it.
Totally.
And you and Michael Longoria were kind of like these singing, dancing roles, right? Centering it, and they sort of like, oh, we don't need the singer-dancers anymore.
Yeah, I was originally like the female ingenue for the first half of the first act, and then I came out as a male clown called the Banana Man, who pulled all these things out of his pockets and
The Banana Man
Yes.
pulled things out.
I mean, like 1,500 bananas and a music stand, and I played a ukulele. I also tap danced on point. I looked like Albert Einstein, and I weighed like 500 pounds.
Oh my
I looked
God.
crazy, and I was literally doing like every form of dancing. It was crazy.
Was that miserable or was that fun? You prefer the first act.
Well, actually, I loved being a clown. That was
Yeah?
the whole thing. You know, working on original pieces is always so interesting because things change. So you never know as an actor where you're going to be with it down the line with the project. But for me, that experience was totally integral to my comedy career because I had to learn how to be a clown in a day. I use a lot of what I learned from that experience as Maureen. Like I do some weird miming in the show. And I also like fart jokes. Fart jokes are funny. Farts are funny. If you've seen the new Muppets movie, there's a great part where, I don't want to ruin it, but I'm going to tell this part. Fozzie Bear comes out and he goes, they're like, we need a new moment. And he goes, I got something. I made up these fart shoes. And then you pan down. He goes, I put some whoopee cushions on my shoes. I tied them on and I just walk like this. And then he goes, it's so stupid and funny. It's amazing. But yes, I would love to just, continue to do everything, but comedy is like, I'm having a blast doing comedy right now.
You talked about the being involved in shows and you've sort of become like this go-to girl for readings and I feel like you work on like every new show.
Yes.
It's like, hey, I wrote a new musical. Well, let's get Annaleigh Ashford to go do a reading. And I know you're doing readings of Diner, the new Diner,
Yes.
the Sheryl Crow musical, Diner. And I know that you did Wednesday Addams in the Addams Family, right?
Yes.
And didn't you play Carrie Butler's role in Catch Me If You Can?
I did.
So does that suck? I mean, so what does that mean? That means that you're doing a show and then...
Well, here's the thing. As I said before, when you're working on a new project, as an actor, you're a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
And,
I just don't know how you don't get emotionally attached to shows, though.
You get emotionally attached to roles, I think, more than you do shows.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes, you're maybe just not the right piece of the puzzle for the time or
Right.
the timing that it's in. And so it can seem like it's harder than it is. I feel like I really believe that if you're going to pick this profession, you have to not only believe in yourself, but also believe that your path is going to be different than every other person's path.
Yeah.
And sometimes what you think is supposed to be the right thing is not, and something
Right.
else is coming instead. So, there have been a couple that I've been like, oh, I love that role.
Yeah.
I'll miss the role.
Yeah.
But everything happens for a reason.
Of course. And everybody gets to see you do... I mean, the whole industry gets to see you do these shows anyway and give you their next role.
Thanks.
I mean, it's true. Everybody knows Annaleigh Ashford is a talented girl.
Oh, thank you.
But I just want to talk briefly, you kind of spoof the industry a little bit in Smash.
Yes.
This new NBC show that's starting up, and I saw the pilot, and you're in the pilot, and you have this hilarious bit. You play a crazy actress.
Yes. I play this ridiculous girl auditioning for the role of Marilyn.
Monroe.
Monroe in the show Marilyn Monroe. And she is full on dressed as Marilyn in Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. I mean, pink dress, the diamonds, full beat. She's ready to go in the room and get the job. And Kat McPhee walks up and has like brown hair and like t-shirt and jeans on and is like brings her boyfriend to the audition and says goodbye to him in front of all of us. And when she's sitting down, I like, give her a nasty look, and then she turns and I'm like, hey. That awful girl at the audition, which
You must see this a lot.
Oh yeah,
At
it
auditions.
totally exists.
You're such a positive, loving, beautiful person to me. I think I don't know the nasty side of you, but from what I've seen, you're pretty. You have you like to say pretty words, and right? You always say everything's
magic
beautiful.
a lot.
It was when you were casting hair, it was like, well, duh, of course she has to be in hair.
Oh,
that was a natural fit.
Thank you.
But is it hard to keep all that positivity, to take all that into that world, that audition world? Are you still a positive girl?
Yeah, going back to the clowning, sometimes I turn into like a weird clown at auditions, like waiting to go in. I'm like such a weirdo, just because it's important to block any energy that is not positive out, because it's not helpful. I have to say the ladies of New York are most often so lovely. But you know, every once in a while you get a crazy cuckoo waiting next to you. You know, everybody has their thing.
Yeah, there are some walking around. Speaking of TV gigs, I also loved you in The Big C, which is such a great show.
Yeah.
And you played a hooker. You played a hooker.
I played a dirty hooker.
Okay,
Yeah, you can go ahead and say it.
you knew where I was going. You played a dirty hooker. Was it your first hooking experience?
That was my first hooking role, and not only hooking, but dominatrix. Like, that was a fun one to call my mom about. Mom, I got a job. I'm going to be a dominatrix. She was like, oh, okay, what are you wearing? Immediately. But yeah, what an opportunity to be on that show, especially with all these wonderful, wonderful New York actors who couldn't have been more lovely and open-armed and like, welcome, we're so happy to have you. Even though I was there for a couple days, they were lovely.
But you were dirty because you gave the poor little teenage boy who stole the money and hired a dominatrix hooker out of the newspaper crabs.
Uh-oh, that's what happens when you steal money from your mom and hire a dominatrix hooker from the paper. You get crabs. Hey-o. Bummer for the whole family. They probably had to put everything in weird, black trash bags and call it a day. Hey.
Well, you're wonderful. You're wonderful on camera.
Thanks.
You're wonderful on stage.
Thank you so much.
I love seeing everything you do, and everyone needs to see Rent. If you think that you've already seen it, and there's no reason to see it, you're wrong, because you really need to see it. It's a great production and very moving, and Annaleigh Ashford is an amazing Maureen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
So great to see you.
So good to see you too.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.